Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Flynn. What is up? Sorry I couldn't be there to present this in person. I'm taking the PSAT right now, which is why this is in video format. So I think this project will demonstrate that I have earned an A in this class. Evidence of my learning and growth in reading text meaningfully will be demonstrated by my ability to clearly use the pieces of evidence in the research that I did with the different sources and use the different opinions that were in both all of those pieces, separate out what uh, deferred from my argument and what went against that. But also use all those sources and have them all come together in a way that makes my conclusion and solution very strong because it's based on all of these different pieces of evidence in the different sources. Um, Evidence of my learning and growth in analyzing rhetoric and argumentation will be demonstrated by my ability to use rhetorical appeals to pretty much ensure that no matter what lens you're in, at least some one or two aspect like there will be many aspects where it's very difficult to disagree with me in, and no matter like where you come from, what you believe in, like my argument, you'll see that it's very hard to disagree with many of the points that I make. So pretty much ensured that there are pieces of my argument that no one can disagree with. And I also have a very clear claim of fact, value, and policy that you'll see throughout. It's very clear where they all are and how I use them. Evidence of my learning and growth in writing, communicating in appropriate and meaningful ways will be demonstrated by my ability to use ethos, logos, and pathos throughout all together. You like again, as we've discussed in this class, there's no like they are not separate. They're all one and the same. They all come from the same thing, and that's very clear when I'm talking. You can see the ethos, pathos, and logos in many different scenarios and different places in this. In my communicating, I think my opinions and my ability to vocalize what I'm trying to say and have a strong argument and solution is very meaningful. And that shows clear growth from where I began in this semester and even began in this quarter. Last, you will see that I've taken meaningful creative risks when I interview George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and Thomas Jefferson, all of which I played myself. It was really awkward for me because I was just talking back and forth to myself. You're going to think it's really dumb, probably when you hear it at first. And if you picture me talking to myself, that'll make it even weirder. But I think that's very creative because it's like a fictional kind of thing, but I'm using it strong, like as in a way to have people have a conversation with this podcast and have my argument be made to a variety of people that were not alive uh, in our time. So I think that's very strong and creative. Hope you enjoy this podcast. Sorry I couldn't be there. Peace out. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Adios. I'll see you Friday. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Flynn. I will be the host of today's podcast, featured in AP Lang Period 4. Today, we have three special guest stars. You know them, you love them: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton. How are they back to life? Who knows? We thought they died 250 years ago, but reports are saying they came back to life on January 6th with the storming of the Capitol. Anyways, George, I'm going to start with you. How are you doing today?
Hello, Christian. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So glad to hear. Thank you, George. Thank you for being here. All right, next up, Thomas. How's it going, man?
It is going very good. I'm very glad to be back to life.
Awesome. So glad to hear. Yeah, thank you for being here. And last, Alexander.
Yes, I'm doing great, Christian. Thank you so much for having me here today. I look forward to our discussion. Yeah, thank you.
All right, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're just going to get straight into it. If any of you have any points that you want to bring up at any time, please feel free to chime in. All right, my argument. Since modern-day politics is dominated by two political parties that internally cover many different perspectives, and the system of two parties has caused immense amounts of divisiveness and prejudice. Therefore, the two-party system must be abolished in favor of the ability for multiple parties a candidate can run under with similar and equal chances, so more stances can be represented in both state and federal
government. That's a lot to take in. So I would just like to start off by saying the political climate in America, it's pretty trash. As you've seen, as Biden got inaugurated, there was lots of tension, there was lots of fear in the Democrats and in American citizens thinking that something bad was going to happen, and maybe it would have if something really could have gone wrong. We may never know. Like, there was speculation that was going to happen. There was word around there. But even the Democrats, there's a lot of tension, Democrats to Republicans. I mean, I see it all the time on social media that Democrats are constantly bashing Republicans and Trump supporters specifically for supporting this man. However, it's clear that both sides are extremely contentious right now. And that is just from the citizen standpoint. It gets so much worse with the actual political powers in D.C., in both Congress and the executive branch. All of the branches have lots of contention between Republicans and Democrats. George, you want to speak about that?
Yeah, so as I entered the presidency, I really just thought, I knew that if we ever split into different parties, it would be very difficult for us to work together in politics. And I think it's very clear that this is happening today. As you see, Republicans barely ever sign on to Democratic bills. There's very little decisions made in Congress, and it's very difficult. And it comes from the other side too. Democrats not signing on to Republican bills. It's all about the majority of, who holds the majority power. That party is pretty much the only one making decisions when it comes down to it.
Yes, I completely agree. I think partisanship it's really tough because people they take it so personally and they don't want to work with the other side, which from a certain standpoint, I agree. It's all about if it will help the American citizens in their point of view, which is what we need. We need American citizens at the front foremost of this. However, I think a lot of politicians are thinking more personally about if it will help them get reelected. Yeah, so as we've seen, there's a major lack of representation for all American people, especially in the far progressive left. They are very underrepresented in Congress, specifically because the Democratic Party, there's many different spans. There's neoliberals, there's actual liberals, there's progressive, there's just many different people in politics, and not everyone is represented due to the fact that there are not enough representatives in Congress that actually are fighting for these rights that some people are very adamant about needing. And it's the same for the right. The right, as we saw with the past administration, the right kind of pandered to basically anything that Donald Trump, the former president, was wanting, and they didn't really make decisions based on what was best for the American people. It was more for their president. Hamilton, what do you think of that?
Yes, Christian, when I came into government in the 76 after the revolution ended, I always knew when George asked me to be his Secretary of the Treasury, I always knew that I was going to make decisions on what I believed was right, what I believed the American people needed. I wasn't going to pander to the president. I'm sorry, George. I'm sorry about that. And yeah, I believe that people pandering to this president, they were very wrong, in the wrong. They needed to fight for the American people, not for this president.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But yeah, there's lots of internal problems in the government that has led to where we're at today in society. And now in society, it's extremely very clear that you see people on both sides fighting against each other. Even internally, the Democrats, I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party are against one another, specifically progressives versus more liberal, neoliberal. But it's clear in Trump v. Biden for the fight for the White House, that was very clear. There was immense tension and anger, both in the political powers as well as in the American people. You saw it over and over again, people fighting against Trump. And Trump supporters, they were very adamant about their rights. They went against the Electoral College, tried to get that sent back to the states because they thought that there was a lot of evidence of widespread voter fraud. I'm sorry, just gonna say it, but there was not widespread voter fraud. They were listening to propaganda from the president, which is not great. So that was cause for immense contention. Then we saw it again, Black Lives Matter versus the MAGA, Make America Great attitude. We saw Trump supporters, they were constantly calling out Black Lives Matter. They were saying they were a terrible branch, that they should never have, they were fighting for the wrong cause. They were saying all lives matter, blue lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. And then again in Congress, the most powerful Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, against the top Republican currently, Mitch McConnell, who was formerly the Senate Majority Leader until Georgia was flipped blue and the Democrats gained power in the Senate. So now the Democrats control everything, which we'll see if that's good or bad. But you could see over and over again, because the legislation would start in the House, they would make the decisions, and then these things would be sent to the Senate where the Republicans had control. So it was a Democrat decision sent to the Senate that was it was all Republican, and then it would immediately get shut down or just not even ever discussed. So people just play politics, even if they think that things are right. And again, we saw this with the coronavirus relief bill, stimulus bill. You saw that over and over again. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats, they were trying to fight for sending relief to the people of America who were suffering. They still are. But then constantly McConnell, I think there's definitely fault on both sides. They definitely could have. They just needed to work together. They had to be bipartisan and work together. So it was a 9-month break between the first stimulus relief and the second, just recently passed in December. And people are still upset about it. They're only getting $600 in stimulus relief, which is barely anything. And so it's clear that bipartisanship is the way to go to stop some of the anger. And again, another example of this, I blame the Democrats. The Democrats in 2019, when they sent articles of impeachment to the House floor against Donald J. Trump, I mean, I believe it was an impeachable offense, absolutely. However, I believe they were really pulling at anything they could get, any string they could find that would impeach Donald Trump. You know, that wouldn't have happened back 200 or so years ago. Thomas Jefferson, what do you think of Democrats and Republicans going against each other, just trying to impeach president because they're of different sides and believe different things? What do you think of that? Yes, I absolutely think that's terrible. I think you need to. That really doesn't help the American people in the end of the, they are, again, this is a fault that has led to the political climate where it is today. If they hadn't done something like this, there could have been more bipartisanship, and just, they have to work together. They have to see that they have to work together. Yeah, absolutely. And last, I would just like to say, it's so clear how far the political spectrum has become so divisive over the past even 12 years. 12 years ago, when Obama ran against John McCain for office and the presidency, people on the right were bashing Obama. They were saying he was an Arab, not a legal citizen. However, it's clear that the politicians were very against these stances. As John McCain himself, he repudiated these claims, and he tried to paint Obama as a decent, kind man who he just disagreed with politically, which I think that's what you need. Even if you disagree politically, you shouldn't go after your opponent with things that aren't political. Apolitical things should not have stances in the American politics. And I think it was good that John McCain came to that stance. So yes, as you can see, it's clear now more than ever we need bipartisanship. And just with this two-party system, we are not giving the people what they need. The people are not represented well in government. Over and over again, we see people constantly against each other, as we've said. However, it all starts with people being upset at their own party because they're not represented enough. So, my argument, we need to start a 4-party system. How are we going to do that? At least 4-party. At least separate the parties. We need an end. Because the far left is not represented in the Democratic Party as a whole. People are not represented well. They need this help. We, as a people, have our voice. We have platforms, social media. We can protest all we want, and we can vote. We can vote for things that we deem correct. So, I believe enough people are against the two-party system due to the fact that it brings so much divisiveness and doesn't represent the American people the way that it needs to. So, if we vote, if we speak up, protest, we can get things done. That's the way that we get things done in America, is using our freedom of speech, First Amendment right. And enough people will join this cause because enough people agree with it. Enough people see that. And we need to bring together people to make decisions on behalf of the American people and not for their own benefit in politics and power. So the best way to do that is to help people feel more represented with new parties and with new leadership. So yes, vote, use your power of speech, protest.
We need to best find a way to get around that and end the divisiveness, and I think this is one of the best ways that we can do that.
It is clear now more than ever that we need to come together as a nation. We're the United States of America, not the Democratic States of America, not the Republican States of America. We're the United States. We're all one people and one country. It is very clear that this is the way that it needs to go. And now I'm speaking to every single person that is listening to this, which is not that many. It's probably like 25 people in my class, so thank you for listening. Even if you're on the left, if you're on the right, you need to calm down and just take a moment to understand that we are all American citizens. Even if you disagree with someone politically, if you think their political ideas are bad, we need to come together as an American people and just lower the temperature. Be kinder people to one another, because anger is not going to get you anywhere. So please just remember that and be kind to one another, always. So thank you for joining me as we all begin to come of voting age. Use your power of voting always, and vote for people that are going to represent you the way that you want to be represented and the way that your American constituents want to be represented. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Have a great, wonderful day.